Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome to Over 50 Starting Over. I'm Barry Evans.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
And we've got another classic episode coming at you. I am sorry for my low resolution, crappy audio. I am house sitting and dog sitting this week, but we have important stuff we wanted to share. So we want to go ahead and do it. I thought I had a pair of Apple earbuds with me. That would be better than nothing, better than this, but I don't. They don't work.
Yeah.
They don't work.
Well,
How are you?
take it from here. I'm doing pretty good. Hey, so where exactly are you?
I am on Edgewater Drive by Edgewater Beach, right on Edgewater Beach, which is usually very beautiful, but it's been really ugly this week. So.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah. So the cold weather already? You look like you got a sweater on and everything.
It's a light shirt. It's a long sleeve shirt, but it's light. No, it's not terribly cold. It's like 55 degrees.
Gotcha.
But it's been cloudy and rainy all week. And we've had such a beautiful summer and beginning to the fall. I can't really complain too much. You and I were going to do this podcast 6 days ago.
Right.
And last Friday, we got our wires crossed with timing. And as I was getting ready for the podcast, I took Charlie for a walk. This is at our house, mine and Lisa's house. And I got up to our lake and I just, oh my God, I had to take this photo and share it with you. And, you know, now I just recalled that my screen is
now that is beautiful. Boy, oh boy.
You should see it on my high def screen. I leave it up here. I've left it up here all week so I could just look at it every day. It's
beautiful.
Gorgeous. But it's the time of year, as this is a perfect time where the seasons are just changing, going from summer to fall. Right in this photo, you don't see a lot of color in the leaves yet, but you see the fallishness in the clouds and the sun.
You really do. Yeah. And I think it's just the, you know, in the fall, the angle of the sun.
Gets
just
more golden.
And it just the clouds do look amazing in this picture. And at this time of the year, we're getting the same kind of stuff down here.
Are you?
I saw the most amazing sunset last night. I mean, I was just in awe, and it's like that almost every day here. It's the sky here in Arizona is just amazing, man. We've had these crazy weather things happen because, you know, we have monsoons here in Arizona. I didn't know about that until I moved here. But these storms are absolutely magnificent. I've
mentioned it a lot.
I have been in situations where the thunder was like a continuous thunder, like one thunder that lasts for like 30 minutes. It's not really one. Yes, it's not one thunder.
It rumbles. Is it just?
Yes.
Rumble?
Yeah. It's like nothing like I've ever heard.
Now.
Yeah. It's like and the lights that are happening.
It's a light show.
In the sky are like strobe lights, and you start to think maybe there's a giant alien spacecraft above the clouds here. I mean, because nothing like that. I've seen a lot of storms, never anything like that, and that's happened a couple of times now. Yeah. And it's beautiful, it's breathtaking, and after a little while, it gets a bit scary. I mean, I'm not afraid of storms or anything, but when you hear that, you start thinking, yeah, maybe Jesus is coming back now.
Well, you know, obviously, speaking of storms, we have what's going on in Florida right now.
Oh boy!
I just pulled up the radar on that, and it's near. I know that many of us have family and friends there, near and dear to our hearts. It's our home away from home, Sarasota. That's where Lisa's mom lives, and boy, I was shocked to see this morning, Merle, how much that hurricane has pulled out of Florida.
Well, I don't think they were expecting that, Barry. I mean, right. I was watching late last night because I want to, you know, I'm very concerned about this too. And they were saying, you know, but it'll landfall on the other side it was supposed to be tonight. Wow. Early tomorrow, but it looks like it's moved across the state in record speed. Yeah. And I did hear also, Barry, that I'm really glad to see this, by the way.
Yeah.
This is a miracle as far as I'm concerned, because of course, we were praying about this and everything for our family members. But it just before it hit landfall last night, it was registering a category, almost a category 5. It was a category 5, and then it scaled down to a 4. And shortly after it hit landfall, I got an alert that said that it scaled down to a category 1. Now,
Really?
A category 1, right? Now, they still got a ton of water, a ton of flooding. The surges on the golf course actually caused waves to surge into the rivers, which flooded areas like Fort Myers and other areas. So we'll have to see what the damage is. A category 1, you're still looking like at near 100-mile-per-hour winds. So it's not like, oh, it's just a category 1, but it's not the devastating, like, remember Andrew took out all of Florida. It's not going to be like that, but we're still going to see, I guess the damage is yet to be seen here.
Well, I Googled Sarasota news this morning, just a little bit ago, to check on it. And I was happy to see that, we've seen all the pictures out of Fort Myers and stuff where it's just flooded like crazy. Naples, that's really, really south. Florida,
right?
Flooded like crazy. Sarasota, the pictures I've seen is just like down trees, some signage, but I'm not seeing the flooding.
Right,
so
right.
I'm just being hopeful about that. And, Lisa wanted me to mention about the prayer that you sent her. And, maybe you sent it to me and I copied it and pasted it and gave it to her. I couldn't find it real quick as we were talking, and I don't want to disrupt the podcast, but she said it was super meaningful to her that she reread it over and over again over the last couple of days. And she's really super appreciative. And we both believe, and you are just tapped in there, and you got some influence.
Well, I it's my pleasure to always pray for the folks that I love, and it's just great when things like this happen. Because I mean, yesterday when I was watching this and I saw how it scaled down to a category 1 very quickly, I thought, this is obviously an answer to prayer right here. And I know I wasn't the only one. So a lot of people praying.
But
and the power of prayer is really, it's our most powerful weapon against evil.
Yeah. So I just really appreciated that. And I hope the best for it. It's mostly seniors down in all that area affected, but people that are going to have a hard time cleaning up their place, replacing things. I mean, a lot of these people aren't exactly wealthy. A lot are, but a lot aren't. And so it's going to be tough for them to get it back.
Well, and here's another thing too, Barry, and this happens every single time. I know about this because I used to have a headquarters in the Fort Lauderdale area, Boca Raton, actually, and I'd been there shortly after some of these hurricanes. And what happens is contractors come from all over the country. You could tell they're in town because there's pickup trucks everywhere, and what they're there to make money. And of course, there's an opportunity for cleanup and things like that. And there are definitely good people that come to do that, but the scam artists are also attracted like flies. And many of these elderly get taken by these people, and it's a real shame, and it's something that they've really got to look out for down there.
Well, I think that's a really good segue. Agreed too. Two things I wanted to talk about in the spirit of O5O, over 50 starting over, things that I think are helpful. And that is, well, buying a new iPhone. That's always like, oh my God, now I'm faced with this $800, $1,200 expense. Well, I'm going to show you don't need to get anywhere near that. But also what you said about scams. I get emails forwarded to me every week from family, friends, and clients saying, hey, Barry, is this a scam? And I want to show you guys how to identify that on both your computer and on your iPhone. Now, I did pre-record this last week, and I'm going to try and do the email one now, and I'll splice in the iPhone one because my screen isn't that good this week. I don't have my camera. Okay, so first let's start with my artwork. I put all that where'd it go? There it is. Okay. Barry's consumer review. Do you see it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
That's awesome, man.
All right, let's get out of that. I just gotta get some mileage out of it. I put time in it. All right, so this is about, I mentioned this before several months back. I couldn't remember the name of this website, but I said, if you want to buy affordable refurbished electronics, then to check out this site called, oh, I forgot. I thought I was sharing. It's called Back Market. I will share now. Just show it.
Back Market. Okay.
Yeah. And you know what? I couldn't remember the name of it. And I was thinking it's something like Black Market. I'll tell you what, if you Google Black Market, it comes right up number one. So, right? Yeah. And I did a lot of research on these guys back when I was looking to replace my laptop and later an iPhone. And I'm just really sold. I get nothing out of this, no kickbacks. I'm just trying to share a good consumer tip.
Yeah.
So what I found was they're very highly rated. Check out their reviews, and they have a system of refurbishing that is very trustworthy. So I do trust the outfit. And so this is when you pull it straight up. And if you're looking for an iPhone, watch this. Just click here in the search bar, go to iPhone. And right here, we got one. That's an 11 for $300. But right here, first row, an XR. I'm honestly not sure what an XR is. I'd have to look.
I'm not sure either.
But only $203. iPhone SE 2020. This is exactly what I have. It's a great phone. And me, I don't like big phones. I keep it in my front pocket. I like the size of this phone.
Yeah.
It's only, now it's starting at $130.
Jeez.
You got to make sure.
A new one today is how much? Like 800, something crazy like that?
Yeah.
Jeez.
And you just simply have to make sure that you got the right amount of gigabyte storage space.
Well, that's huge.
Yeah. Well, see, I don't listen to music on my phone, but I listen to podcasts.
Right.
I certainly don't watch movies on my phone, but if you do, you're going to want a lot of gigabytes of storage.
Right.
So, but most of us would have some experience with in the past. Have we run out of space or not? So,
right. Yeah.
So I wanted to just share that with you. And also,
hey, that's pretty cool.
Looking for a new laptop or iPad, I also suggest this is a great way to go. Don't get anything too old, because things will get out of date at some point and it's going to become junk. So don't get anything too old. That's my only advice to that. Now I'm going to stop sharing on that. And I want to give you your tips on how to detect if you're getting scam email. And this is a thing at our age where most of us aren't exactly in tune with all the latest scams, and we have trepidation. We hear about them, these phishing attempts, where they're getting your social security number. It could wreak havoc. So understandable that we have trepidation about this. But in 90% of cases, this one quick tip will identify if it's a scam or not. Now let me try to find my email. Sharing the screen like crazy already. And back to some basics here. Okay, so I save this. I get a scam email every day. I save this so that I could show you exactly how to do this. Now, I'm always been totally a Mac guy, so I don't know if this 100% works the same on PC, but it's going to be close. So this is a common one, something like this. You made a transaction. This makes you panic right away, especially when it's for $1,100 to PayPal. You got to be kidding me. I purchased a laptop. Wow. So we got 800 numbers, which I'm sure are scam as well. And PayPal is a name that you would trust. I always keep the remote artwork off. I don't let that load automatically. So you can change it in your preferences, because the scammers can detect if you actually read an email, because it can read if you load the images automatically. So I keep them off and only if I want to load them, do I manually. But here you see it is from an address called social, and they're typically hidden from us, these addresses. But if you click on this, you will see that it is from social blah, 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 bunch of numbers at social.helwan.edu.whatever. That is obviously a scam. If it was from PayPal, it would be from something like mail.paypal.com. So you know that's a scam right away. Typically, I had another one around here, but typically they use Gmail addresses. And since they're hidden, most of us can't see that or know that. But Gmail is the most common way to hide your address. I'm sorry, to be anonymous. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Now, what if it's your iPhone? I think most of us are, when we're checking our mail, probably are using our iPhone. Okay, guys, sorry, back to the crappy audio and video as I'm at my friend's house, different day. This is the iPhone. So this is the email in question down here. And if I click on that name, then my email comes up. And this is about some, look at your order for the Geek Squad. I didn't order anything with the Geek Squad, but again, you see the name kind of at the top. I'm going to click on that again. That expands it. So now I can see that it is 2 undisclosed recipients. That is usually the case. So that's a red flag. And then I click on that name again at the top, and it comes up with the email address under other, which is a whole bunch of Logan, blah, 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 use something at gmail.com. Okay. So it took 3 clicks on the email address itself to get to the actual send from address. And that's what's important. Usually going to be a Gmail address. So beware of that. That is definitely a scam. Okay. Okay, guys, got another tip for you from the Cleveland Clinic website. I get updates on this, typical ways to stay mentally and physically healthy. And this is really good stuff. I only save the best of the best for you guys. And this one is titled Stay Active in All 3 Ways to Boost Your Brain Health. And it's real brief, so I won't take a lot of time with it. As with your heart, keeping your brain healthy in your twilight years is an important element for quality of life, because many habits to help protect your brain also lead to a happy and fulfilled life. In a recent study, ages 55 to 75, 2 life-enhancing habits topped the list for helping combat age-related memory decline. And this one, first one was a surprising one to me. Number 1, being socially active. Number 2, undertaking mental activities like learning a language or using a computer. And hence, we just did that little computer tip right there. But the socially active one really took me by surprise.
Really?
Up there at the top of the list. And,
what exactly does that mean? I mean, like getting out and being around people and things like that? Is that?
It does. But they also, and I went over this with Doug Knoll in a podcast about 6 weeks ago. And he was talking about, no, it wasn't Doug Knoll, it was Dr. Stephen Treziak, who does the Compassionomics. And
I remember that one.
Yeah. And he was quoting studies about, even if you just have a roommate, you're something like 27% more likely to live 20%, some crazy amount longer. It's a lot healthier for you. Just having a roommate. It's a lot of us find ourselves at this age, and more so, living alone. And we get a little stuck on our ways. And then you start getting lonely. And all of these, it could be a slowly degraded process into depression. And
I can see that.
Negative thoughts. So
yeah,
it's something to keep in mind. And, I try to get Lisa's mom out just to the community center in her development from time to time, take part in those kind of activities. It's bingo, they have shuffleboard, different things like that. It really, there's a lot of times, Lisa certainly knows this. I'll get off the phone with you before we started doing the podcast, really. That's how the podcast started. But I get off the phone with you after an hour to 2 hours, but my heart would just be full.
Right. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, she's like, oh, the rest of his day is great, that kind of stuff. Talk to loved ones. It's super, super important for your heart health.
It really is. Yep.
Let me just finish a little bit of this stuff. There's not a lot here. Those who are engaged in these habits had lower resting heart rates, which is a sign of better cardio fitness, and were less likely to live alone. Back to that social thing. For adults over 75, having a faster walking pace was associated with staying sharp. So just pick up the pace a little. Walking is so good for you, especially at our age and even more so down the road. In summary, staying active and engaged in all three ways, physically, mentally, and socially, may help prevent memory decline and decrease the risk of dementia. And dementia is an ugly thing, folks.
Boy, it sure is. It is terrible.
So here's a few tips. Ask yourself this. If your work life tends to crowd out your social life, make some changes and book regular dinner dates with your favorite people. Hey, how bad is that, right? Good advice.
Right.
2, if you're social, on the other hand, if you're a social butterfly, but also a couch potato, carve out time for daily walks or other workouts with a friend. And 3rd and final, need mental stimulus, enroll in a class like language, art, music, or whatever sparks your interest. Or as I mentioned before, pick up the computer, play some of those word games and things like that. They actually do help you a lot with your mental fitness there. And that's the end of that. So I think it's kind of simple, and I think it's pretty positive.
I think it is too. And I, the Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. This is right at the very beginning of the Bible in Genesis. Wow. And that's when God creates Eve. And so we're not the Lone Ranger. We're not meant to be the lone wolf. And you're right, Barry. Over the last few years, there's been a whole lot of isolation going on for some reason, as you know. And a lot of people have their health has seriously declined as a result. And I think it's all of those things that you mentioned, but the real isolation piece where you're all alone. A lot of elderly people have been very afraid to go outside and even have their family members come over. And then, gosh, they just don't do well like that. It is a terrible, terrible thing. And I'm glad to see people are starting to, these things are starting to change, but it just shows, I think it's been a case study on how important it is to keep up the social. It's not just for older people, younger people, all of us we need each other. We really do.
Create those good habits too. The earlier we can and carry them on into, so we don't do that slow degradation into a depressing lifestyle.
Well, and Barry, I don't know about you. I know you've worked out of your home for many, many years. I have too. And there was a long time where, there's been where Anne Marie was going to work too. And I was just working out of my home by myself. A lot of times I would hear the mailman outside and I would just run out there and just, hey, buddy, how you doing? Wait, where are you going? What do you mean you have a job? But yeah, I think it's important. We did become friends, actually.
Well, of course you did. Of course you did.
I need people, man. I personally can't be alone. I lived alone in an apartment for a little while, and it was cool at first. And I know you've lived alone for long periods of time. I'm an introvert, but it still gets me. I moved in. I ended up moving in with 7 other people after a year and a half of living by myself. And for me, it was like paradise moving in with those other people.
Wow. Those would be my hell.
Those were some of the greatest people I've ever met. And I remember in Chicago.
Oh,
I remember being alone. I'm terrible when I get sick. I'm not good. I'm a baby. I never get sick. And so when it does happen, it's like the end of the world for me. And I remember living by myself and getting sick and being at home for like 5 days. And I had these terrible nightmares, like almost hallucinating my nightmares. I've been like, when I get sick, I really get sick. And it was terrifying being by myself. And I remember after I moved into this other place, we all had our own separate rooms and everything. It was this great big place downtown Chicago. I ended up getting sick, and it was the same kind of thing where I was alone and I was afraid. And two of my roommates took it upon themselves to totally take care of me. They went to the store, they got medicine, they got juice, chicken noodle soup, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was just like, I was so gracious that I was so grateful that they had done this for me. And I was very moved, actually. And that's when I knew I need people, man. I can't be by myself.
So as introverted as I am, there's been those times, you know what it was a lot of too, when I would be in between girlfriends and all that, really feeling alone, living in my house. I'd have my dog, but then dark, cold winter comes. And it's
They're
like
brutal.
You don't even want to go outside.
No, you're right.
Depressing, man. Depressing.
Well, and especially in your neck of the woods where and we've talked about this before, but it just gets so gray, gloomy every day for just long stretches of time. It's like being on Neptune or something. That's what you would think would be like.
There's the opposite end of the spectrum. And I talked to Lisa's mom about this a lot is, she's just getting through, well, now a hurricane, but getting through the summer, that's her winter. That's her Cleveland winter.
I get it.
In Sarasota, she's trapped.
That's how it was here.
Yeah.
Here in Arizona, I mean, it was 110 to 115 degrees every day. Yeah. And I would go outside and I could hear like this sizzling, and it was me.
Well, don't you dread opening the car door as well?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's overwhelming in there. Yeah. Or you sit down on my black leather seats. Woo!
Probably the only car in Arizona with
black leather seats. Exactly. Of course, I bought the car in California, but
right.
But yeah, it's
hey, buddy. Along the lines of what we were talking about, just the health stuff and all that, how are things going with you?
Really an adventure here that I'm having with this whole thing with Optavia and my health coach, who is my brother and his partner in this whole thing, Diane. And I've had just a really stellar experience. I've learned a lot about taking care of my own health and keeping this as a sustainable lifestyle, because really it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And the cool thing about this, Barry, is that it's really all focused on the why. I don't know if I explained this last time.
No, you didn't, and I wanted to ask you too. So what you're saying about creating the lifestyle, is your intent to, in time, wean yourself off of it completely and just maintain yourself?
Yeah, so that's really, I'm not sure, Barry. I don't think that I want to stay on some kind of program forever. But I do want to be able to transition to being able to just know how to maintain myself. So yeah, that is really the goal, is to maintain myself. And that's really what you learn through this program, is the healthy eating habits and the things to stay away from. Right now I'm in weight loss mode, but there's another phase of the program for maintenance as well. So they have that. You could be on that eternally if you want to. A lot of people are on that. And in fact, that's what Scott's on right now.
You know what I call that? I call that intermittent fasting. Well, I've stayed on it all this time and I've maintained my weight. I'm staying right where I'm.
It's a great way to maintain your weight, the intermittent fasting. I mean, you can lose weight that way too, but I think it's a much better way to maintain weight. And I'll tell you, Barry, that's been my challenge, is the maintenance part. As hard as it is to lose weight, the mental part about maintaining is, I think the transition to maintenance is going to be, well, it's been a challenge for me in the past, because, when you're losing weight, it's like, yeah, I lost X amount of pounds and you're all jazzed about it. But when you're maintaining, it's like, yeah, I maintained weight. You start to get excited about that.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. And so
So you want to fall
I'll,
off the wagon and have some fun.
yeah, and that's the thing, is that in this program, what it really teaches you is how to have a whole different attitude about food. In fact, when you have, so you're having 6 meals a day, and 5 of them are called, in their terminology, fuelings instead of meals. Because what they want you to do is they want you to change your attitude towards what you're putting inside of you. Just like your car, you wouldn't want to put bad gasoline in your car because your car's not going to perform well. And so you want to think about that, what kind of fuel you're putting inside of your body, and is it going to burn well? Is it going to corrode the engine or different body parts, those kinds of things. So again, it's all about attitude on this whole thing. And it all starts with this, I'm circling back to this, the why. And this is what you go to when you're struggling. This is really your whole motivation, is why you're doing this. And really, I think this is a great model for anything that you're going to do, any kind of challenge. And so I wrote down a whole bunch of things before I even started of what I wanted out of this. Why am I doing this? And the first one for me was, I want to live long. And I don't want to just live long. I want to be healthy. Yeah. Right. I want to be able to move around and things. And I realized that, obesity can be the time limiter and the health limiter as well. So also, I'm sort of vain, and if there's a mirror in the room, Barry, I have to look at myself. and lately I had been looking at myself, and it was that same music you were playing, womp womp. Just, like, oh man. So I want to be able to wear clothes and feel good in the clothes. I was starting to stretch all my clothes to the limit, and that didn't feel good. And then here's another one was, I'm just going to give you a couple. Some friends of mine have a swimming pool, and they keep inviting us over, and they're like, jump in the pool. And I'm like, no, thanks. And I never do. And I have my reasons, and it's because I'm embarrassed. Yeah. And I want to be able to get invited to the pool and just not be embarrassed. And so, well, here's one thing. It is. So let me just I'm going to take a side route here. So, one of the things that I'm, being a Black guy, I'm very light skinned, and it's sort of embarrassing because if I take my shirt off, you would think I was a white guy because I don't take my shirt off. And so I'm like, okay, so 2 things. When I go to that pool, I'm all flabby and I'm just pasty white. And so what I started doing was going out in the backyard and taking my shirt off and just soaking in the sun for like 5 or 10 minutes a day in that 110 degree heat. Yeah, exactly. Getting that vitamin D in there and everything. No one can see me. It's all fenced in except for the golfers. And I don't care what they think. They're not looking at me anyhow. And so I got all tanned up and everything. And I've now lost 27 pounds. And I'm exercising now. I've gotten into this whole push-up routine now, and I'm doing those. I'm doing about 40 of those a day, and and I'm seeing changes, big time physical changes in my body. When I like now, when I take my shirt off and I look at myself in the mirror, I'm not embarrassed for myself, and I can see cool things happening. It's like I'm seeing my college body starting to come into focus again. Wow. And it is very, very motivating.
Fighting machine in college, man.
Well, it's funny that you say that, and there's something that I'm not going to be able to say on the air, but I remember in college, and I was working at that amusement park, people used to get so mad at me over there, and then they would look at me and they would call me a skinny MF. And I told Anne Marie, I can't wait till someone calls me that again. So sometimes she calls me that just to make me happy.
That's funny. Okay, and this is going to sound like a downer. I don't mean it to. Do you think it's realistic? Because you were really, like, you had very, very low body fat Because you're
Oh,
a
I'm an adult now. I'm not a kid, but I have a weight goal that's not the same weight as I was in more towards the very end of college and the beginning of my business career. And I'm about halfway there.
Okay. Well, that's all good stuff.
In fact, in a couple of pounds, I'll be halfway there. So it's coming up on 8 weeks, and being halfway to my huge goal in 8 weeks is a pretty good click.
I would absolutely say 8 weeks goes by very, very quickly.
And it surprisingly did. It surprisingly did. And here's the other thing too. I have so much support on this, and this is really the key, is all the support. And I'll tell you, a couple of weeks ago, I was on this great click of losing weight every week, and then the week before last, I got on and I gained weight. And I was so demoralized on that whole thing, like, because you work really hard and to gain weight.
Yeah.
And I gained 3 pounds actually, and I was
how did that happen?
well, I figured it out, and that was the cool thing. So I every week I put in my weigh-in number to my health coach, who was my brother, and also Diane. And so immediately, and I get on the scale. Okay, I got the scale that I hate. I got a hate relationship with the scale because it's a digital scale. You get on it and you're like, all right, that's a good weight. And then you go, let me just make sure. And you get on and you're 3 pounds heavier.
You got to do like 3 times.
How did that happen? And then you're like, okay, well, that weight can't be right. It has to be the first weight. So you get on it again, and it's the higher weight. And then you're like, okay, let me get on again. It's the higher weight every single time. Bingo, on the dot, because it's like whatever the weight is, point X.
Yeah,
and it's like always right. It's like perfect. And you're like, oh, it's so demoralizing. So I was like, I think I was trying to just jump on and jump off and just record that. And I think this may have been a scale thing. I've since bought a new scale. This was just, I want to chuck that other one onto the golf course. But anyway, so I had to send in, I text Scott my weight, and he called me right away. And he knew how I was feeling. He knows me. And he was like, Merle, you look, this is a good thing because you're going to learn from this. Okay. This is just a minor setback, but you're going to be thankful down the road that you did this. We talked about it, and I told him, here's what happened last week. And here's a couple areas that I thought I could kind of take advantage of, which I couldn't. And I found out there's a couple of things that I had that cashews. I had some cashews as a snack. And I love nuts. And I ate too many of them. Did you know how much fat is inside of a cashew? And how many calories? Let's see. I have 13 grams of fat and 156 calories per ounce. I'm sure I had several ounces of those. Those nuts.
Well, cashews are so hard to put down.
They really are, and especially when you're hungry.
Yeah, if you have them in front of you, they're impossible. They get that creamy kind of thing going on,
I thought I was doing a good thing too, because they don't have any salt in them on the ones that we had, and I thought, okay, well, it's protein, right? I'm just no. And then another thing, I had something with a whole bunch of salt in it that I didn't really realize was salty. And of course, you retain water. This diet is really super low salt, very few carbs, if at all. You're high water, so you're flushing any kind of salt out and stuff like that. And it's made a huge difference. They talk about inflammation, all that's gone down, and
wow.
I mean, it's pretty, this whole program's been pretty amazing, Barry.
Well, I gotta say, equally impressive with everything you're talking about there is the fact that you're doing 40 push-ups a day now. That's really impressive.
Well, and here's the thing too, Barry, is that I think I talked about this last time, is these micro habits that Dr. Anderson of Optavia talks about, is that, and he used the specific example of push-ups, which I was wanting to get back into. And I was trying to do push-ups at the weight that I was in, and I was hurting my wrists. So I'd gotten to that point where I was hurting I couldn't even do them. And he was saying, well, here's what you do. Just get down there and do one push-up and make that your goal. And what he talked about is the psychology of that is that pretty soon you're going to get down there and you're going to say, well, as long as I'm down here, I might as well do two. Right. And then now you're doing two every time you go down. So that's how I started. I just did one. And then I was doing two, and now I'm doing like 4 sets of 10. And so I've worked up to that, and I'm just going to keep adding to that kind of thing, because in the whole idea of micro habits is do something that's ridiculously easy to do, so that and then merge that in more and more until it becomes a habit.
Just the one thing to keep in mind too, so you don't get too disappointed again, is that with all these push-ups you're doing, you're going to be adding muscle.
Exactly, which was also another factor in the weight gain that we talked about, which is that the scale isn't everything. What's really more important is how you feel, how your clothes are fitting, what's happening with your outer body. So that was the other thing, is that we looked at the difference between muscle and fat. And I actually have a little picture to share here on that. And this is fortunately, I don't have any sound, but really that's the actual to scale here, 1 pound of muscle, 1 pound of fat. So again, I might have gained weight, but and we've talked about this before, but the body, the measurements are way better.
Oh, for sure. And again, you're just going to feel a lot better, the way your clothes are fitting and everything, and that's what counts.
Also, look at that to see that picture of that fat. That was gross.
Yeah. And remember this one too. I mentioned this one before, like I came up with the study. But I have read and I verified it's true. For each additional pound of fat that you're carrying, that's 5 miles of capillaries your body has to push blood through.
That's amazing. And think about how your heart is just, the powerhouse of your body, and how, it's just like Scotty on Star Trek, me balance, can't take no more. Just I get to see it. Anyhow, so good stuff, man.
It kind of slipped my mind for a bit there, but we had talked last night about because the subject of parenting. A super, super hard subject, interesting subject that I want to look at a lot. Like I'm supposed to possibly tomorrow have a podcast with Eric Christensen, the documentarian, because we started talking about that a few weeks back. He got back to me and said, hey, can you do it tomorrow? And I was thinking, wow, well, I think it's cool that I think the discussion with him would be almost as intro as our discussion as well, because what I'd like to do is throw out these ideas that we have. And I think most of us don't even know how to talk about parenting too much. We get very personally offended sometimes. And there's a lot of, you could get even religion versus someone else's politics at war in a result. But I think what I want to lead to is, after these discussions, when we realize how much we don't know and realize what our real questions are, I want to get a child psychologist on here.
Yeah.
Really
interesting. Yeah.
It's like there's nothing more important in the world, and we don't even know how to talk about it really. One great jumping off point, you and I were talking last night, a really good jumping off point is, what's your views on corporal punishment? Meaning spanking. And to spank or not to spank, let me tell you something. You got to watch what you're saying in which circles. I even saw
that's for sure.
on Facebook a few days ago. Some people were having this discussion, and it becomes a bubble. And this bubble happened to be like, well, when we were kids, we got spanked, and look how great we turned out. And now these days, but you get in a wrong bubble, man, they're gonna condemn you as a child abuser.
Yeah.
And so I just want to ask you, what is your opinion on that? To lay hands on a kid, and I'm just going to say, I think that it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough subject, and the fact is as parents, we're so responsible for our kids, not just for their own lives, but really for for everybody else's life as well. Because if you have one notorious kid, he can literally change the world. Look at Hitler, you know, and so we really have to look at it from that view. Is that are we raising kids that are going to go into the world and be a blessing to the world, or are they going to be a curse to the world? And that's really, so much of that is on the parents, and they just don't understand it. And before I answer your question, I just want to say the story about, I went to a restaurant with Anne Marie several months ago, and it was a really nice steak restaurant. And you know I love my steak, Barry. And and I was hungry. Okay, so let's just paint the picture. I was hungry when I got there, and I wasn't in the best of moods as a result. And we were the only ones in there except for this other family, and it looked like it was a mom and dad with I think it was her parents, the mother's parents were there, and these two kids. And these kids, Barry, were little demons, and they were running around that place and hopping around on like booth seating. They were like jumping up on the seats of other tables, not even the one that they were sitting at, other tables, just hopping around like it was like a one of those bounce things, you know. And then they were actually climbing up on the backs of those and walking around on top of them, and they're screaming and then jumping down onto the floor and racing up and down the aisle where we were sitting. And it was so annoying, and it was just terrible. And I was looking at the parents like, why don't you say something? And they wouldn't. And I thought, this is terrible. And so I decided, you know what, I'm not eating here. I'm going to get my stuff to go, because I can't even, this is just terrible. Well, and so I went up to the counter to tell the guy, hey, I'm going to take this to go. And while I was there, these kids decided to play on the booth seat right next to me, and they're climbing on the back of the chair right in front of me. And I just said, you're not allowed to do that, or you're not allowed to do that. And they were freaked out.
Someone like actually said something to them.
Yeah. And then the grandmother immediately, whoom, she's right there. Like, just, you know, like mama bear guarding these little kids. And she's letting them climb all over the place and everything. And I thought, well, how terrible is this? Mm-hmm. I mean, what, you're supposed to be saying something to your kids, but anyway, so we took our steak and we left. And you know what? I never went back there again either.
Because that's unfortunate, because the restaurant is taking the blame for that bad parenting.
Well, and you can't run a restaurant and let people climb all over your furniture either.
So tough, though.
It is tough, but that's your place that you pay for, and you have clientele, and you have to control that. You can't just let people do whatever they want in there. And that's what I'm talking about.
I know, and you're making a good point. Let me make it even more succinct, because I think this is the same point. When we went to school, the principal had a paddle with freaking holes in it.
Yeah, so he could get a good swat on you.
Yeah.
I remember that.
If they called your parents, you were terrified. Please don't call my parents. They'll kill me.
Oh my God.
Now it's completely the opposite. No way anybody's going to hit your kid, not even you. And if they yell at your kid and call you, if the kid gets in trouble and call you, chances are those parents are going to come in and take the side of their kid.
That's exactly right. That's
so
right.
I always say, look, I pretty much always believe the truth is somewhere in the middle. And once again, I do here as well. I mean, first of all, a principal with a paddle is begging for child abuse.
Yeah. Those days are over. Yep.
And even with parenting, I tend to believe in, I prefaced our conversation last night with this. Lisa and I never had kids. And I said this to Eric Christensen as well, assuming we're going to explore this more. I think there's something interesting and valid in getting a non-biased point of view along with parents' point of view. I think there's validity to it. And so I tend to think, without the experience of parenting in this day and age, that there is a certain small window of time when maybe your kid only understands getting a little spanking. But the problem with it is that it once again opens a door for child abuse. Like you said it. Why don't you tell me what you said about that last
So here's the thing is that, so the point of the story I just told wasn't, so spank your kids. That's not the story at all. I really think that this is
discipline doesn't have to mean spank.
No, exactly. That was really the point, is discipline your kids. You have a responsibility, not just to the kids, but to your community as well. And it's important for the health and longevity of this soon to be adult. They can't just do whatever they want in society. They've got to be able to fit into the norms of society. And your job is to help them to do that. And they'll have a much happier life as a result. And now I don't say everyone should go spank their kids. I don't think that. In fact, I would even say that boys and girls are very different from each other. They learn differently. And I know that's even taboo, but it's the truth. Yeah. And so when you're raising, and I have a boy and a girl, raising a boy was so much different from raising a girl. I don't recall, and I do believe in spanking. I was also spanked as a child, but this was, let me just explain something, that this is not an easy thing. It's probably one of the biggest responsibilities you have as a parent, on how you actually do this, because it can actually be one of the greatest blessings for your child, or it could be a curse, and depending on how you do this. And so the rule is, you never spank your child if you're angry. This is not a revenge kind of a thing or anything like this. This is a tool that a parent can use to help their kid to stay out of hellish situations down the road. And so my son is my oldest, and I remember the day I had to spank him, because what happened was, I had told him after several times he had crossed a line. I don't remember what it was, but I told him, he clearly understood, if you do that again, you're going to get spanked. And he crossed the line on purpose. And so I said, okay, I'm going to have to spank you. And I remember I got him into his room, and I left the room for a minute, and I came back. You don't hit your kid with your hand. I used my belt, and I spanked him on his butt. And I remember that it hurt me. I remember hearing my dad say, my dad never said this, but I've heard this on TV, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. And I thought, that's a bunch of crap. But it was a big deal. And it was a big deal to him too. Yeah. And I remember I left the room and I lost it. I mean, it was hard, but I gave it some time. I pulled myself together. I went back in the room. I put Brandon on my lap, and I told him why I had done that. And I spoke to him in a voice sort of like this. And I told him how much I loved him and how much I thought that he was an amazing boy, and that I was so much in love, and that I treasured him. But because I love him so much, I don't want him to hurt himself, and that these are things that are going to help him to be a good boy. And I don't know how much he understood that, but there was a bonding that happened right there. I really very rarely ever had to do that as a parent. I don't think I ever did that with my daughter. Because my daughter, I could just look at her and she would know, but the deal was that, as a result, I really didn't have to do that with him very much, because he learned very quickly. And as I look at it now, and I look back at it, they're 29 and 30, and boy, they're such great kids. I mean, they never got in really any trouble growing up or anything like that. I think the more important thing is what happens before and after you do something like this, which
Agreed.
is, this unconditional love that you show to your kids. And, my whole thing was, yelling at them. I rarely ever yelled at the kids. If I ever did, it was shocking to them because I never did. And so you save those things for times where you need, it's a tool as well. But if you use it all the time, it's ineffective. So I don't know how to explain it any better than that, but it sure did work out in my family. And it's not a pleasant thing, but it's a thing that I think saves your kid from future problems down the road that are irreversible.
I know, but it's just so difficult to identify. It's such an up to the individual parent, the individual kid to
yes
make, the parents got to make that judgment and be responsible for those actions. So it's a lot easier to say no one should ever put a hand on a kid, because if you've got to make a blanket statement, that would be the one that you have to go with.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that you can't say, hey, if you do this, XYZ is going to happen, and then you don't do it. These red lines that you give to your kids,
pushing past that final line to
right.
see how far.
Yeah.
And boy, that was me, man. Nobody pushed the boundaries of reality more than me. I had to find out where those actual walls were.
Well, and think about if no one ever stopped you from going over those walls, and how detrimental that would be to your life then and in the future. I mean, I just think about how and as I said, I just really, boys and girls are different. I know inside of me, and I remember when you and I met when we were early on in college, there was a wild side to us. Like we were like wild horses, and we had the same amount of energy as a wild horse, and that's enough to, when you could feel empowered to do anything you want, because that's what happens as a result of this, you're going to end up in jail. That's just where you're going to end up.
For sure. What do you think about bullying?
What do I think about it? I hate it, of course. I've been bullied as a kid, and there was a terrible experience, but I also believe that I learned a great deal from it. And for me, it was a rite of passage. I learned self-confidence through my experience with bullies.
Huh. Okay. That's another one that I think that people could argue about till the end of time and never come up with anything great on that one, because there is a bit of, it's kind of like fat shaming. Oh no, that'll create body dysmorphia and all this anxiety. True, at an extent it would, but if everybody's going to tell you you're great being fat, well, that's going to be really bad for your health.
No, yeah, you're right.
There's a degree of shaming that actually does turn people around. I'm tired of this, and I'm going to do something about it.
Right.
But then there was there was a doctor on Rogan a week or two ago, Dr. Gabor Mate, and he was talking about the 2016 Democratic Convention, when God, Morgan Freeman, he played a role as God, narrates a video depicting a 4-year-old girl getting bullied. She runs into the house to her mom. Her mom says, "No cowards are allowed in this house," and ushers her back out to confront her challenges. And this was cheered emphatically at the 2016 Democratic Convention, because this was seen as resistance building. And I think you were kind of speaking to that a second ago, Merle. But many now see this as neglect or abuse today. And this depiction of this 4-year-old girl running into the house and mom saying, "No cowards are allowed in this house." Well, that was supposedly from Hillary Clinton's childhood. And this was how she grew up to be this great, hardened woman, when she's actually like the most unlikable person on the planet. So
what a story.
Yeah. Huh?
Well, I want to,
how quickly our attitudes have changed on this.
I know it's so crazy, this world that we live in. I gotta
Yeah.
say, I the more I hear Morgan Freeman speak, the more I like him. I get a kick out of him. Anyway, I think it boils down to kind of the same thing as we talked about last time, Barry. I don't know that it's going to impact everybody the same way. And I think that a lot of how the outcome of these things, a lot of it depends on how the parents, if the parents are involved, and if they're able to help coach the child through these kinds of things. Because fortunately for me, I had that benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was bullied by a guy that was 4 years older than me. I was 6 and he was 10. And every time I went outside, this kid beat me up. And it all happened because he told, I had my best friend, and this guy glommed on to our friendship. And he started telling me that his dad was a doctor and that my mom was white, not black. And I was like, well, no, she's black. I know she looks like she's white because she's very fair skinned, but she's black. And he said, no, she's not. And he attacked me. And right at my friend's house, and I fell all into this his dad's speaker and put a hole in it, and they were mad at me, all of them. Like, this one kid wanted to beat me up, and his mom wanted to beat me up too.
Oh,
I had to like flee the house.
Wow.
So over like a 2-week period, this kid, every time I went outside, beat me up, and I didn't know how to defend myself. And so I told my parents, and my Aunt Chris was there, and she said, you know what you're dealing with? And I said, no. And he goes, you're dealing with a bully. Mm-hmm. And she said, I know, because I was a bully. And she said, here's the deal about bullies. Bullies are cowards, and cowards are afraid. And you know what they're afraid of? You. And if you were to stand up for yourself, you might have to fight, but it'll be the last time you have to fight. And I was like, wow, I hadn't heard that before. I was 6. And then my dad came home later that day, and he told me, well, here's how you defend yourself. And he showed me how to put up my dukes and block myself and how to punch. The next time I saw this kid, I came outside, and he was sitting on the fence, and he had a bunch of rocks and he threw them at me. And so I ran. I didn't want to fight the rocks. Him and his friends had actually headed me off at the pass. And he goes, now I got you. He started pushing me, and I just remembered everything my dad said, and I charged him, and I got on top of him. I started wailing on him. I was punching him in the face and everything. I was winning, and he grabbed a hold of me and he bit me on the stomach, and it felt like fire. And I remember I said, ah, and I rolled off, and he got up and he ran away. Him and his friends ran away. And I went home crying. But you know what? I never had to fight that guy again. I never even saw that guy again.
Wow.
And so for me at 6 years old, I was like, I just conquered a giant, 2 of them really. And like that went with me for the rest of my life. Like I've gotten in several fights in my life, but I always knew that I knew how to defend myself. And I walked a little taller. And you know what? After I ended up about 1.5 years later moving into a school where I was the only Black kid, and having that fortitude on the inside of me that came from those other experiences really helped me to get through those things where I would question my own self-worth and who I was and who they were. And so I think that for me, that whole bully experience was a huge benefit, even though it was terrible and terrifying. It was a huge benefit to the rest of my life.
I could totally understand what you mean by that, but I could also see that going completely sideways on you when you talk about 2 of those guys. They could have really pummeled the hell out of you, and it would have had a very different effect.
Well, let's put it this way, though.
It doesn't get back to the initial.
Well, at the end of the day, this guy kind of beat me. I mean, sure, I was on top of him, but the end of it was he bit me. I rolled off and cried. So I actually lost the fight. So it didn't go well for me, actually. But I knew that I was beating up a 10-year-old and I was 6. That part alone was like, okay, I got some chutzpah here, and I don't know, something different happened on the inside of me there.
Well, I understand.
I could see how it could have gone differently too, but if I would have continued to avoid it, I would have just been humiliated by that guy every day. He wasn't ever going to leave me alone.
Yeah, I think that dragon would have kept getting bigger to you as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's a good way of putting it.
There. Yeah. But the whole this whole conversation about parenting, hoping over time to just try to get some good ideas rolling. Like, one thing that I've thought about for decades is that we should have personality development classes in schools that teach us basics about being people, about how, and I know the difficulty of it would be religious groups feeling like they're being stepped on, or it'd go left, it'd go hard left in a minute, politically. But it just feels like people should, at an early age, get a little bit of learning about, hey, we're social animals and we're socially interdependent. And so you'll find that things go much better for you when you play a role in that, when you cooperate rather than try to swim upstream and play a self-centered. What I'm trying to do is just get a little bit of a guidance away from idolizing the self-centered sports figures that are really bad role models and things like that. And at the end of it, so if this started in elementary school, went through junior high school, middle school, and then by the time you got to high school, there is actually some lessons on parenting. And this is where this conversation, I wanted it to go. What would be the main, so that's why I wanted to ask about corporal punishment, about spanking, about how do you deal with bullying? And there's the other side of bullying, and that is the parents of the bully, which probably should be have to face some ramifications. And I don't think there's any way of really doing that now. But even I would like the discussion to cover, and I'm thinking, like, if I could actually get Eric Christensen to do a docu-series on this, then a whole segment on how our legal system affects parenting. And number one, disincentivizing the nuclear family. Number one, how do you incentivize a man staying within the family and being a role model for his kids? Things like that. I'm sure. I love
that. And I can see how our systems are set up for disincentives right now. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, I was just talking about this with Anne Marie before we got on, is how important it is to have a dad in the house, and just how that makes a difference in their lives. Anne Marie's father died when she was 2 years old, and so she didn't have she really didn't know her father, and and it's an uphill battle when you don't have that dad in the house. It's a tough thing. So there's I almost forgot where we were going with that. Did you ask me a question?
I guess what I was throwing out there is to talk, how would a class, the problem of trying to give people personal development classes that taught them how to be just a halfway decent human being, since they're not getting a lot of that at home, to, by the time they're in high school, to actually give them instruction on parenting. But see how that's where things get tricky, man.
That is. And really, traditionally, where do you learn parenting? You learn it from your own parents,
who didn't learn it from anywhere, but their
parents, right?
Learning it. They're doing it on the fly.
Well, this is it. And this is how family traditions happen, because a lot of those things, sometimes they're based on mistakes that happen and things like that. I understand what you're saying. And I see the dilemma. Like, you try to teach that outside of the family, and you're going to have all kinds of controversy because everyone's got different ideas on how that should happen. But and when we have this in this day that we live in with all of these fragmented families, there's got to be some kind of help. And I know church going people, usually they can find that kind of thing inside of their church. Outside of the church, I think it's going to be tough because there's so many different ideas. Even when we were kids, gosh, there were so many different ideas on how to raise kids. They remember the old Dr. Spock and everything. And not everything Dr. Spock said was right. So I don't know. It's a tough one. He was
heralded as the authority, and now he's kind of like not so much.
Yeah, he's a punk now, and back then he was a god. So who knows? It's a crazy thing.
Dr. Laura.
Oh yeah, of course. I do.
She'd get a listener on her radio show and just pummel them, and everything was her about toughening up or something, self-responsibility, which is fine, but she would just give. It's like they screen people.
So she was kind of mean, actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She basically gave people that needed a good beating.
Yeah, and they liked it. They came every day for a good spanking.
You didn't know she was going to say that. Get off your ass and stop whining, and all of that.
I kind of liked that because people need to hear that, right? Exactly.
Everything though.
There's a fine line. There's a squelch button in between these extremes, right? I mean, just like spanking your kid. That's not the pat answer every time, right? No, like these are things. These are things as a parent that you have in your toolbox, but you gotta, just because you have a toolbox doesn't mean you use the same tool for everything. You gotta learn how to use these things. And I agree, there should be some kind of place. And I think just out of safety and logic, it's probably going to be in your place of faith, where you're going to raise your kids. Because I know in my own church, I learned a lot about raising my own kids. But for me, most of what I learned came from my parents. Like that whole thing about spanking Brandon. That's exactly how my dad did it. It was terrible getting spanked, but then afterwards he would come back in. I remember sitting on his lap, and this love that I had for him would just well up. Like I wanted him to be happy with me so badly. I had this innate thing inside of me where I wanted to please him, and I wanted him to be pleased with me. And when he would talk to me after that and just build me back up again, and this love and the way that he would talk to me and everything. And at the end we would hug, and I would just cry for joy that my dad, I can remember hearing his heart and, up against my ear. Oh my God, I miss him so much. Yeah. He is such a great guy. But these are things that, he was a disciplinarian growing up and everything, but then there came that time in life where things changed and we became friends. And having him as a friend after all of that discipline and everything, I felt so worthy of his friendship. And I don't know, there was something really special about that I knew I wanted to have with my own kids.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we could ever get a really good conversation going somewhere along these lines, you would be like, and I'm thinking back with Eric Christensen documentary, you would be a really good person to interview. Usually in these kind of a series, they take a bunch of different segments of people to try to do a study. You would be a really good one to address your outlook on the study.
Well, I'm very grateful for my life. I have two fantastic parents. My mom, I haven't even talked about her, and she is just, she's overwhelmingly awesome. And my dad was too. Here's a picture of him right back here. And I always wanted to be like him. I always looked up to him. He always told me, he was very successful in life. He always told me, one day, Merle, you're going to be way better than me. You're just, the things I'm doing are nothing compared to the things you're doing or going to be doing. And I remember that being very hard for me to believe, but he would tell that to me all the time. And, today he's still an inspiration to me today.
Well,
when I
that's
think about
exactly
him.
what that is. What he did is instilled this inspiration within you, like the sky was the limit,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
saying those things. So that's a beautiful thing. We could come back and talk about this another time, because I would want to do a little bit of Googling up on some of the legalities, see what some other experts have to say about what the laws are doing for our family nucleus,
Yeah. And it's we live in a crazy day too, where, a parent, what is it called? Child services could get some kind of report from a neighbor or whatever, and pretty soon they're at your door. And of course, child services could even be weaponized. We've seen that before too, where people's kids get taken away because of some kind of political belief that they have or something. It's so this is a tough area, as you preface the whole thing with. There's no like right, this is absolutely right or this is absolutely wrong, because look, on the corporal punishment thing, you're spanking your kids because you're angry or you had a bad day. I mean, that's child abuse, and we can't do that. And on the flip side, if you're not even disciplining your kid whatsoever, I think that's a form of child abuse as well.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, so it's a tough one, man. I think we beat this one to death for now, though.
For now, because I think it's a super, super valid conversation, that it's just so tricky that you got to just piece it together.
I agree.
Not
I
going to
agree.
get from A to Z in one conversation.
It is so important what we're talking about right now, because I mean, and we can see that we're, at least here in this country, we're struggling with our kids and what to do. And remember, these are the people that are going to be running our government when we're too old. And so we need to, I think we've done them a big disservice here.
My intention is to get a child psychologist on here and have the same conversation after I put a few more pieces together. And I think I have to do a lot of background checking on that, because I know today you can get them coming from some different walks of life. Big time. And I sure don't want somebody on here telling them that they should, force your boys to play with dolls and, like that.
I think that there's a lot of that out there.
There is. Let's just lighten it up a little bit. I didn't think to put a link to this. I just made a quick note. Did you hear about a week ago, this story out of LA, of course, this woman that's heading up food racism or food equality? You didn't hear about this?
No, but I've been hearing a lot of things about this kind of stuff. Yeah. But go ahead.
So something like the Los Angeles School District. I think that
Los Angeles Unified School District.
Yes. They've been sharing her Instagram posts, which are all about food equality. All food is created equal. Yeah, quit the shaming, because unless it's poisonous or something ridiculous, so she's trying to say that, if you want to eat cookies and ice cream all day, every day, that's fine. Don't let anyone tell you can't. If that's what you feel like. Well, somebody did a little search on her LinkedIn profile, and she, of course, is a representative for one of the largest food companies that also owns Nabisco and all these other sugar.
All those factories. Cookies.
Yeah.
All the cookie makers.
But of course, the Los Angeles School District would see fit to put that on their Instagram page.
These people are so upside down and backwards. It's hard to tell where they're coming from anymore. Yeah. Well, and we're seeing a lot of things about food and world hunger. Yeah. Biden just the other day had a big conversation about food, and I think he's got an executive order out or something to end hunger by 2030.
We
I
talked
think it.
about that.
I think it's interesting that whole 2030 date is being used a lot. 2030, 20. We're going to own nothing and
Well, I think China
love it by 2030, and we're going to end world hunger by 2030. Go ahead.
China said that they expect to be the world superpower by 2035, I think. Not maybe it's
2040, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what made 2030 so popular.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's 2049 is their date. That's the 100-year anniversary that the Chinese Communist Party came into being. So that's when they want their world power to happen. Interestingly, on this is that it's 100 years, right? Yeah. The 100 years before that, they call the 100 years of humiliation, and this is.
Well, I think I lost you. Guys, I'm going to assume that Merle's connection is gone. And I guess we'll just wind this up. I did want to share something that I thought was quite touching. And this is, I thought, very touching. This passenger on Southwest flight is surprised by cabin crew as they announce she's cabin free. So
today's flight, we have a passenger who's headed to Hawaii with us today to celebrate her victory over late-stage breast cancer. You got me early on that one. She fought valiantly and is now cancer-free.
Hey, Bear.
Please join me in giving her Gerald Oldham a round of.
I am sharing a video about a woman that is with her friends on her way to Hawaii as a celebration that she just got declared cancer-free after battling breast cancer for 6
Oh my
months.
gosh.
Oh, it's so touching. Oh my God. But I did just realize that since I don't have my regular equipment with me, you're probably not really hearing that well.
Oh, I heard that really well, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Let's just finish it up. It's a second.
Today's environment just makes it special that we can share that human bond to take care of each other. Everybody's a big family out there. Welcome aboard. Congratulations.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I say it's hard to watch. It's not hard to watch. It's hard to watch without being very, very moved. That's what you would say the agape love is when you just are sharing in someone else's success like that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, can you imagine? I mean, wow. I have some people that I know that have suffered with cancer and now are cancer, or they're in remission. I don't know. I guess you can be cancer free, or in remission. But what a terrible thing to have to deal with. Gosh.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely the C word.
So yeah, I lost you there for quite some time.
We were talking about the 100 years of humiliation. I was just saying that they pumped all this opium in, and the Q dynasty at the time tried to stop it from happening. They actually had wars over this because there was such profit in opium. And what it was doing was it was destroying the citizenry of China. All they wanted to do is smoke opium and hang out in opium dens.
And there were learned, hey, give these guys a whole bunch of fentanyl over there.
That's why that's happening. And so many other things that have parallels that you could see they're now going to turn that on the Western world, and we're seeing it. It's actually very interesting. But yeah, world hunger, it's one of those things that and we're also seeing synthetic food factories being put up at breakneck speed. Bill Gates,
Microsoft guy behind that?
Yeah, Bill Gates is behind a lot of it. They already have factories that have been built that actually they're bug factories that they're actually making bugs that can be used as food product, and they grow the bugs there and everything. That's actually happening, right? It sounds so crazy, like that can't be happening. It's happening.
He's supposedly going to have us all eating synthetic meat within like 10 years or something.
Yes. And I mean, the other thing that's been happening coincidentally at the same time is a lot of our food processing plants around the world have mysteriously caught on fire.
Oh, right.
And gosh, a plane flew into one in Georgia a couple of months ago, a big one in Paris, the biggest one actually is in Paris, and that was destroyed by fire. And so while all these things are happening and talking about, cows, a lot of cows died mysteriously over the summer because of global warming. A lot of really crazy things going on right now. Well, I don't want to eat bugs, Barry. I want my steak.
I did this a while back ago. We were talking about food factory fires before, and I Googled it before. Actually, I used DuckDuckGo for the most part.
Good.
And just like last time, instantly all kinds of stuff came on. So this isn't BS, people. This is like easy information to find. It doesn't seem like it's talked about a whole lot.
No, it's crazy.
Fact check. It's a fact check. Food processing plant fires in 2022 are not part of a conspiracy to trigger U.S. shortages. Now, who knows which side of the aisle these guys are on? It's Reuters. So could go either way. When I looked up before, verdict, false. Accidents and fires at processing plants are not planned to intentionally create food shortages.
Well, but that's beside the point. I think the article goes on to say, yeah, there's been a whole bunch of fires at the processing plant. So they're only trying to say there's no conspiracy to do that, which I don't know how they prove that. Because
I know that's going to get political. It's going to come from a political side. Now, this one, I saw the listing of the fires.
It's unbelievable, the list.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
There we go. There's all these fires. Look at that. Look at that. The list goes on and on and on. How can you say and that's never happened before. So this is just a coincidence. This is a coincidence. Come on, man. There's a lot of coincidences that are happening. How about Nord Stream 1 and 2? Have you looked at that?
I have. So it seemed like we were accusing Russia of that, and then Russia was accusing us of that.
Right. Well, it's crazy because if you're Russia, I mean, you have to put yourself in Putin's shoes, right? I think he wears a size 6. He's a little guy. But anyway, why would you do that? Why would you destroy the only leverage you have over the Western powers? You would want to keep that intact because he already closed it off, right? He was only working 20%. He already closed it off because of this whole thing that's happening with Ukraine. So, and he's got these guys in Europe on their knees because they're saying we're coming into wintertime and we're all going to freeze to death. Yeah. So he wouldn't destroy it and then lose any leverage he has to negotiate with the Western powers. That doesn't make he's not a dumb guy. I mean, he might be crazy.
Why would the West do it?
Well, there's a good reason for it. And let me just give you two things. Number one is, I don't know if you've seen the video. Back in February, our president was actually saying that if Putin were to invade Ukraine, that Nord Stream 1 and 2 would be destroyed. So he put that out there. He had several people in his administration put that out there too. This was before the invasion happened. Now the invasion has happened. On the same day that Nord Stream 1 and 2 were damaged, and by the way, they're saying seismic activity in the form of what appears to be 100 kilograms of TNT is what caused these holes to appear, and it looks definitely like sabotage. And so on the same day, another pipeline was announced. This pipeline doesn't go through Russia. It goes through Denmark over to generally the same area where Nord Stream is. So it looks to me like the one was destroyed in place of another one that the Western powers have built. That all happened yesterday. And so we don't know what actually happened. It looks like sabotage. The blaming Putin doesn't seem to add up. The Polish government immediately upon the discovery of this said that it was the United States and thanked the United States for it. That was the Polish president. This is outside of his waters, by the way.
Wow.
So this is now being viewed as a pretty huge event in the whole thing between Russia and the Western powers, and many are saying that this is a prelude to World War III. We don't know that yet, but we also know that Putin was talking about, as you mentioned, nuclear attacks and things like that. And then within days of him saying that this happens, this could be a pretty humongous thing, and it seems extremely reckless if we were a part of dismantling Nord Stream 1 and 2. But the replacement pipeline won't be, I don't think, is going to be ready anytime soon. So the Europeans are looking at, especially in Germany, are looking at a very cold winter coming up here. And people can die that way. And I mean, a lot of what's happening today is reminiscent of what happened in 1939, right before World War II happened. Also reminiscent of World War I, when the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, which in Austria or Serbia, which started World War I. These are the kinds of triggers that happen here. So this is crazy time we're looking at right now.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's reckless. I think you used that word.
It is reckless. It is reckless.
Yeah.
We should not. And here's the other thing: is as much talk as we have about global warming these days from our own administration, if we indeed did sabotage that, which the chances are good that we did, there is a boatload of methane that's coming up out of that water right now, which is, as they say, the main cause of global warming.
They know that's BS.
What's that? What's
the environmental concern of it?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing, is either that's right or that's wrong. But the fact is that it looks to me like this is all BS, and this is an act of war which just happened, which that would mean the United States is directly combating Russia. That would be an attack by the United States on Russia, which is how great wars start.
Yeah, I think our military just they're like, Biden, you got us out of our forever war in Afghanistan. We need back in.
Yeah,
stinks.
You've talked about this before, and I agree with you on this, Barry. I really believe in, I've been studying the World Economic Forum, and it looks to me like these very uber rich people are very much involved with what's happening on both sides.
Yeah.
With Russia, China, the United States, the European Union. These guys are in the middle of all of that stuff. So this is ugly. It's a big web of a mess. I don't have a lot of confidence in our own president to be able to, I think he's part of it, actually. I don't know how we get out of this, Barry.
No, I don't either, Merle. I do have to wind up, though. I got to get going. Any final things that you wanted to relay, though?
No, I think we talked about the most important things. I definitely wanted to talk about that Nord Stream thing, because as far as current events goes, because I really think that's the biggest thing that's in the news right now.
Yeah.
I was going to go into some of the things that are happening in California right now. My buddy just told me he's paying $7 per gallon for gas over there.
God. Yeah,
it's craziness over there. But anyway, as the world turns, right, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on. But Barry, I got to tell you, it does feel like a lot of the things that have been perpetrated on this world over the past couple of years by some people that I don't think are good guys, I think their stuff has been discovered, and I really believe the foundation of what they're trying to build to control the whole world is really on flimsy ground right now and about to topple. So I see good things in our future, but I think we got to get through some tough times in the short term before we get there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. All right, buddy. Gonna get going. Gotta get things ready, get this out of here, and get back to my home.
Sounds good, man. Hey, it was really great catching up with you today.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
You got it, bro.
All right. Bye.